I'm William, and before we get into this, let me keep it real for a second. If you're buying cheap right now, most cars will smile at you on the lot and punish you later. Mechanics know that, which is why they don't chase features or flashy deals. They buy the cars that stay quiet, keep moving, and don't ask for money every few months. That's exactly what this list is. The cheapest cars a mechanic would actually trust enough to own. Toyota Camry, 2006 to 2012. Most mechanics don't describe this generation of Camry with passion. They describe it with relief. It's the car they recommend when they don't want a follow-up phone call. In shop talk and long-running threads on places like mechanic forums and owner groups, this Camry comes up again and again as the baseline for cheap but not stupid. The 4-cylinder 2.4-liter engine is the quiet hero here. It makes enough power to merge without drama, pairs with a simple automatic transmission, and routinely crosses 200,000 miles with nothing more than routine maintenance. Real-world fuel economy usually lands in the high 20s on the highway, which is why mechanics love them as daily drivers. Less fuel, less stress, fewer surprises. Ask around independent shops and you'll hear the same thing. Timing chains instead of belts, parts everywhere, and repairs that don't turn into a weekend project. The V6 models are quicker, but many mechanics steer friends toward the 4-cylinder because it's cheaper to own long-term and easier to keep running forever. There are issues, and mechanics are honest about them. Early 2007 and 2008 models can burn oil if oil changes were ignored. That's why inspection advice from forums is consistent. Check the dipstick, look for blue smoke on cold start, and review maintenance records carefully. Do that, and the risk drops dramatically. In today's North American market, clean examples usually trade between $4,000 and $508,000 depending on mileage and condition. That price stability alone tells you something. This is a car people keep, not flip. The ideal buyer is someone who values calm ownership over excitement. The mistake buyers make is assuming boring means outdated. Mechanics know better. Boring means predictable, and predictable is cheap. And that idea of cheap but predictable matters even more when we move to a car that looks luxurious but follows the same mechanic logic. Lincoln Town Car, 2005 to 2012. Here's a car mechanics talk about with a smirk, because it feels like cheating. The Town Car looks like it should be expensive to own, but in reality, it's one of the lowest stress vehicles a mechanic can buy. In forums, you'll constantly see lines like ugly as sin, runs forever, and that's meant as praise. The heart of the Town Car is the 4.6-liter V8, an engine mechanics know inside and out. It's understressed, makes modest horsepower, and is paired with a simple automatic transmission that hates abuse but rewards normal driving with absurd longevity. Real-world fuel economy isn't impressive, usually high teens in mixed driving. But owners accept that trade-off for reliability and comfort. What mechanics love is how honest this car is. Body-on-frame construction, rear-wheel drive, and suspension parts that can be replaced in a driveway. Taxi fleets and livery services ran these well past 300,000 miles, and that reputation still echoes across ownership forums today. There are known weak spots, and mechanics will tell you exactly where to look. Air suspension failures are common, so many recommend checking whether the car has already been converted to traditional coil springs. Intake manifold cracks on earlier models are another known issue, but by this generation, most have already been updated. If they haven't, the fix is straightforward and inexpensive. Market prices right now are shockingly low. You'll often see clean town cars selling between $3,000 and $6,000, even with reasonable mileage. That's why mechanics quietly scoop them up when they need a winter car or a long-distance cruiser. This car is perfect for someone who wants maximum comfort with minimum drama. The buyer mistake is assuming luxury equals complexity. In this case, it's the opposite. And if you think that kind of reliability only exists in big, floaty sedans, wait until we shift to something more familiar and far more commonly cross-shopped. Quick pause for a second. If this is already changing how you look at the used market, tap like so YouTube knows this isn't clickbait. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this without the hype. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. Different markets tell very different stories. Honda Accord, 2007 to 2011. Spend 5 minutes in a real repair shop and you'll hear this sentence eventually. If everyone maintained their cars like Accord owners, we'd be bored. That's not hype, that's fatigue talking. This generation of Accord shows up constantly in mechanic forums as the car that refuses to become a problem, even when owners aren't perfect. Most mechanics point straight to the 2.4-liter 4-cylinder. It's not fast, but it's smooth, chain-driven, and extremely tolerant of long ownership. Paired with either the manual or the automatic transmission, it regularly delivers real-world fuel economy in the mid to high 20s, sometimes better on the highway. That balance is why mechanics recommend it to younger buyers and commuters alike. The V6 is where opinions split. It sounds great and pulls hard, but forums are full of warnings about timing belt maintenance and cylinder deactivation issues if oil changes were skipped. Mechanics don't say avoid it, they say buy it only if the paperwork is perfect. That nuance matters, and it's something cheap car shoppers often ignore. Inspection advice from technicians is consistent. Listen for suspension clunks, check motor mounts, and make sure the transmission shifts cleanly, especially on higher mileage automatics. None of these are catastrophic, but they affect price, and mechanics use them to negotiate. Market-wise, this Accord sits in a sweet spot. Expect to see prices between $5,000 and $9,000, depending on mileage, condition, and engine choice. They don't stay listed long, which tells you how much trust the market still has. The ideal buyer is someone who wants a daily driver that fades into the background. The biggest mistake is assuming all Accords are equal. Mechanics know engine choice makes all the difference. That quiet reputation for competence sounds familiar, but the next car takes that trust and adds all-wheel drive, for better and worse. Subaru Outback, 2009 to 2013. This is where mechanic opinions get more nuanced and honestly, more interesting. The Outback isn't loved because it's flawless. It's respected because when it's bought correctly, it solves problems other cheap cars can't. In snowy states and mountain towns, forums are full of mechanics admitting this is the only all-wheel drive car they'd trust on a tight budget. The 4-cylinder boxer engine is the talking point. It keeps weight low, gives the car great balance, and paired with Subaru's all-wheel drive, it feels planted in conditions that scare front-wheel drive sedans. Real-world fuel economy usually lands in the mid-20s on the highway, a fair trade considering the traction advantage. Now for the honesty mechanics insist on. Head gasket concerns still come up in discussions, even though this generation improved significantly. That's why inspection advice from Subaru specialists is very specific. Check for coolant residue, watch operating temperatures, and confirm maintenance history. The continuously variable transmission also gets scrutiny. Mechanics don't hate it, but they demand smooth operation and fluid service records before signing off. What keeps mechanics recommending it anyway is how the rest of the car holds up. Suspension components are durable, interiors age well, and the chassis takes abuse without rattling itself apart. Owners on forums regularly report 200,000 miles when maintenance isn't skipped. Market prices reflect that reputation. Expect to see these listed between $6,000 and $10,000 depending on mileage and drivetrain condition. They're more expensive than a Camry for a reason, they do more. The ideal buyer lives somewhere weather matters or roads are unpredictable. The buyer mistake is treating it like a Toyota and ignoring maintenance. Mechanics know Subarus reward attention, not neglect. And speaking of cars that reward a very specific kind of owner, the next one flips the script completely, louder, heavier, and way more controversial in shop conversations. Dodge Charger, 2011 to 2016. Not every mechanic wants something sensible, and this is where the Charger sneaks into the conversation. Usually, it comes up late at night, half-jokingly, followed by, just don't buy the wrong one. In forums and shop talk, this generation Charger earns respect, not for perfection, but for being honest about what it is. The real mechanic-approved version uses the 3.6-liter Pentastar V6. It makes real power, pairs well with the automatic transmission, and delivers surprisingly decent fuel economy for a big sedan, often low to mid-20s on the highway. That balance is why fleet mechanics, especially those who service police vehicles, defend it relentlessly online. The V8 gets all the attention, but mechanics quietly steer budget buyers away unless they're ready for higher fuel, insurance, and tire costs. The V6, on the other hand, is seen as durable when oil changes are done on time. Forums are filled with owners passing 200,000 miles with minimal drivetrain issues. Inspection advice is practical and blunt. Listen for suspension noise, check front control arms, and make sure electrical systems behave normally. Early infotainment glitches and sensor failures show up often in mechanic threads, but they're usually annoyances, not deal breakers. Market pricing is one reason mechanics keep recommending it. Clean examples commonly fall between $7,000 and $11,000, which undercuts most full-size sedans with similar power. Parts availability is excellent, and labor times are reasonable, something techs care about more than badge reputation. This car fits someone who wants space, comfort, and a little attitude without luxury car repair bills. The mistake buyers make is assuming all Chargers were driven hard Mechanics know plenty lived boring commuter lives. And if you think this list ends with practicality, the last car flips everything again, fewer doors, more noise, and a reputation that scares the wrong buyers away, Ford Mustang, 2007 to 2014. This one usually surprises people, including buyers who assume mechanics avoid anything sporty. The truth is, many mechanics don't hate fun, they just hate complicated fun. And this generation Mustang, especially in the right configuration, shows up in forums as a guilty pleasure that actually makes sense on a budget. Mechanics overwhelmingly point toward the V6 models if the goal is cheap ownership. The 4.0-liter and later 3.7-liter engines are simple, naturally aspirated, and far less stress than people expect. They make enough horsepower to feel quick, pair with durable, manual, or automatic transmissions, and return real-world fuel economy in the low to mid-20s on the highway when driven normally. The V8 is where the warnings start. Not because it's unreliable, but because ownership costs stack up fast. Tires, fuel, insurance, and suspension wear all come up repeatedly in mechanic discussions. Many techs admit they love the sound, but wouldn't recommend it to someone shopping cheap. Inspection advice is straightforward and very mechanic brain. Check the rear differential for noise, look for suspension wear from aggressive driving, and inspect clutch engagement on manuals. These cars attract modifications, and forums are full of stories about buyers inheriting someone else's bad decisions. Stock cars are gold here. Market prices are why mechanics still consider them. Clean V6 Mustangs typically sit between $6,000 and $10,000, sometimes less if mileage is higher. That's a lot of car for the money, especially when parts are cheap and everywhere. The ideal buyer wants something engaging without luxury car repair bills. The biggest mistake is buying on looks alone and ignoring how the car was driven. Mechanics don't fear Mustangs, they fear neglected ones. And that's the common thread across this entire list. Cheap doesn't mean risky. It means choosing cars people who fix them every day still trust enough to drive home. I'm your friend, and I'm here to help you avoid the mistakes most people only learn the expensive way. If this video saved you time, money, or stress, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. More honest car advice is coming.